evening, everybody. So tonight we're going to do some live NFL talk. So for this one, you can tell by the title, I'm going to discuss the new coach hires. I'm also going to give my thoughts on the Pro Bowl, and then I'm going to discuss the Super Bowl media day that happened yesterday with Donna Kelsey, Jason, Travis, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Sirianni, Andy Reid, Juju Smith-Schuster talking about Philly cheesesteaks, all that. So I'm going to discuss all that right there. But first, we're going to go through the head coaches a little bit. We're going to take a look at some of the moves that have been made throughout this offseason, some of the head coaches that have been hired, and some of the vacancies still open. And also, though, we're not just going to talk head coach. We're going to talk a couple coordinators as well. One who was just recently hired and another one who was hired a little bit ago. But let's get right into it. So here today, so for everyone coming in, just want to say, if you haven't done so, make sure to like, make sure to leave a comment in the chat, and subscribe. So let's get into it. So we're going to start off by discussing the coaches right here and giving an overview of that right there. Discuss the coaches. There are some of the new NFL head coaching hires right there. So let's get into it. Let's start with DeMeco Ryans to the Houston Texans. DeMeco Ryans just led one of the top defense in the NFL, excellent defensive coordinator, had a very unpredictable scheme there with the 49ers. Based on a lot of blitzing, you would see some situations where you didn't know what was going to hit the offense. And DeMeco Ryans built that off of being aggressive, and also to his credit, had great football IQ right there, which made him a hell of a defensive coordinator for those San Francisco 49ers. Right, I mean, they clearly, the defense was one of the main driving forces of that team with all the with all the injuries on offense, particularly at the quarterback position, having to rely on Brock Purdy to start. So DeMeco Ryans played a big role in them even making it to the NFC Championship game in the first place. So I got to give him props right there. They're a great defensive coordinator, but now DeMeco Ryans, he's going to have to transfer over to being a head coach. Give me one moment. But yeah, he's going to have to transfer over to being a head coach now. Now, that's going to be different. And remember, though, here's the thing. He's going to be the head coach of the Houston Texans. At this point, why would anybody want to coach the Houston Texans? And why would anybody trust being the head coach of the Houston Texans? Why would you even trust that organization? Why would you want to go there and possibly take a chance on them, firing you in just a year? You know, obviously DeMeco Ryans, he wanted the opportunity right there, and he takes the opportunity, and I wish him best of luck. I'm also going to wish him best of luck in his job security, if anything, because the Houston Texans are such a wreck right now. Ever since Bill O'Brien tore that team apart, getting rid of Jadeveon Clowney, trading DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt walking, Deshaun Watson wanting a trade, then had the whole Deshaun Watson saga, which led to them eventually trading him to the Browns. And what do they have left? At this point, they don't have anything left. And you had Dameon Pierce had a decent outing his rookie year at running back. You know Davis Mills wasn't the answer at quarterback in the long term. So that's going to be a long rebuild for the Texans. A long, deep rebuild for the Houston Texans throughout this season. 2023 season. So please, if you're the Houston Texans, give DeMeco Ryans a chance. At least give him 2 years. See if DeMeco Ryans can do similar to what Dan Campbell did his first year with the Detroit Lions, where even though the team isn't playing that great, he could maybe bring up the morale in the locker room. So you want to see if that happens, if the morale in the locker room is higher for the Houston Texans, they play more competitively. So that's something you're going to have to look at right there. So that's a key right there. But I don't think this is a winning scenario here for DeMeco Ryans, just because the Houston Texans don't. Ever since they fired Bill O'Brien, it's been in 1 year, out at the end of the season. I mean, obviously now DeMeco Ryans, he's going to have to go from just focusing on the defensive side of the ball, which he's done his whole life, being a linebacker in the NFL, to then being defensive coordinator. Now he's tasked with the challenge of now having to help put together a team, coach a team, having to find that franchise quarterback, which probably they're going to draft Bryce Young, but you want to hope if you're going to draft Bryce Young, DeMeco Ryans, now it's your responsibility to work and make sure that you work on developing Bryce Young properly if that's the road you go down then in the draft. So you're going to have to, focus on that too. And plus, there's also the worry too that if you're DeMeco Ryans, that you might be gone at the end of the season, because Houston Texans, they fired 2 head coaches back-to-back seasons. So best of luck right there, DeMeco Ryans, and that one's what I got to say. But so far, until proven otherwise, I think any coach that goes to the Houston Texans is in a lose situation right there, I feel like. So my thoughts right there on DeMeco Ryans. Best of luck to him. Now, the next one right here was hired the same day, actually. January 31st. If you guys might know who that is, that's Sean Payton to the Denver Broncos. So, hey, if you're the Denver Broncos, I get it. Sean Payton, not only was he a head coach in the NFL, but he was a head coach for over a decade, for a decade and a half with the New Orleans Saints. Well, it's hard enough to be a head coach as it is in the NFL, but to be a head coach for a decade and a half, and not only that, but to reach a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl, that's an impressive feat that most coaches don't do. So Sean Payton certainly has a better coaching resume than most at the NFL level that have tried it. So I understand for the Denver Broncos, you're looking for somebody, and that somebody you feel is Sean Payton. He's only a year removed from coaching, so bring him in while he's still young enough and he's still in tune with the times. So I think that's a good move right there by the Broncos. So I think the Broncos, I get what they're thinking. Smart thinking right there. Try to bring in Sean Payton. So, hey, Chad, thanks for coming in. And prayers go out to Jerry the King Law. Yeah, I did read something about that. Yeah, he had a stroke. Right, and so, yep. What's it mean? Yep, so moving right along, I'll say. So with Sean Payton, right, I understand why the Broncos bring him in, but here's the thing with Sean Payton. Here's the biggest challenge. He's going to have to focus on working with Russell Wilson. Now, with Drew Brees, all those years Sean Payton spent coaching Drew Brees, some of Drew Brees' best years. Sean Payton got his start as a coordinator, so he knows a thing or two about being an offensive-minded coach. But considering Russell Wilson's drastic fall off with his performance as a QB, is this a chance? Is Russell Wilson, can he still do it with him? Can Sean Payton actually make it work with Russell Wilson? That's going to be the tough part right there. It's going to be a tough one for him. And plus, you're Sean Payton now. You're playing in the AFC West. You're going to have to deal with Kansas City, who may be going into next season defending Super Bowl chance, depending on how we do in the Super Bowl against them. But, you're talking about Kansas City, who we know will be their third Super Bowl in 4 seasons. Going into next season, they'll have done that. And you got the Raiders, who may get an upgrade at quarterback. The Chargers are going to still be a competitive team at least. So it's going to be tough right there going and playing against a division with a Russell Wilson who looks washed. I mean, this is obviously the toughest challenge right here for Sean Payton. And I've heard, I don't know if it's true, But I've heard, and I did do a short with this earlier, that part of the reason Sean Payton didn't go to the Arizona Cardinals is because of Kyler Murray. So that could be a factor too. Even though the NFC would have been the easier place for him to coach at this point, you go into that NFC, the NFC, AFC is clearly the loaded conference at this point. We're back to the AFC being the conference, and the NFC doesn't have, as much strength overall in its conference. So you would think that'd be easier right there for Sean Payton. But then again, now that could part be because of Kyler Murray. He maybe thought about coaching with the Cardinals. Maybe he met Kyler Murray. He didn't like the guy. So he decided he'd rather take the Broncos coaching job. He went with the Broncos. He liked them better. Probably likes Russell Wilson's attitude better. Even though his performances dipped, he's like, you know what? I have more respect for Russ at this point than I do Kyler Murray. I'm going to take the job offer with the Broncos. That could have been a factor of why Sean Payton would take on such a risk. It could also have to do with the fact that, maybe he wants that challenge too. Maybe it's a combination of that. Maybe Sean Payton wants to prove himself and take on that challenge right there. But yeah, so it's gonna. I know Sean Payton still got something left in the tank as a coach. It's not like you're bringing in John Gruden, for the Raiders bringing in John Gruden, or the Raiders bringing back Art Shell years after his expiration date. It's not like that right there. I mean, Sean Payton, yes, you're bringing in an old face, but he's only a year removed from the game. So he's a lot closer connected to the NFL and how to coach this game than these other coaches are. Than some coaches are. So to Sean Payton, hey, I wish him best of luck because it's going to be a big challenge over there. And now, so that brings us to the next team I'm going to discuss because I just got finished mentioning them, and that is the Arizona Cardinals. So they still do not have a head coach. So they still have them. They're still vacant. Yeah, part of the reason why might be because of Kyler Murray. Some of these coaches don't want to have to deal with the trouble that comes with Kyler Murray. Maybe they're thinking to themselves, oh man, do I have to really deal with this? Kyler Murray, especially they hear all the rumors about him being lazy, being a drastic underachiever, trying to rely solely on his talent, but not putting in the work that it's actually required to be a top quarterback in this league. So they don't want to have to deal with the drama of that. So they're just deciding, man, I'm not going to go to this team and I'm not going to have to deal with that. So that's one of the reasons why that Cardinals spot is still vacant, it looks like. Because of look at this. All the other teams had coaches their coach hired. The Broncos hired their coach. The Texans even hired their coach. Even the Panthers, which I'm going to get to them in a minute. But the Cardinals are the only team that still has a vacant head coach offer. Now, it is February, granted, but this is a lot longer than it takes for most teams to hire a head coach. I mean, I know the Houston Texans took some time last year, but you know what? This is just, that could be a sign that people aren't interested in coming to the Cardinals. So, it's going to be troubling for them. Part of that could certainly be because Kyler Murray, his attitude, or they hear the rumors and they don't like it. So Kyler Murray's going to have to look himself in the mirror and change his thinking if he wants any shot at this working right here, because it's not looking good there. I mean, I don't know who the Cardinals are going to get at this point. I'm going to look up who's still available. So who could still be an option right there? And not to mention, Kyler's going to be coming off a torn ACL too. So I wonder if that's going to happen. I mean, Vance Joseph looking for the Cardinals defensive coordinator role. I mean, there was talks of Brian Flores, but I'll get to Brian Flores in a second. He took another job Oh, so you have to wonder where's B Flores gonna where's he gonna go? No, wait, what home was it? Where Brian Flores is not there, so who? Where is he gonna who's gonna get him? I'm trying to figure out who could go to the Cardinals. I don't know. Maybe a Jonathan Gannon or Shane Steichen, maybe? I don't know. And oh yeah, also yeah, we'll have to see right there. But yeah, well, time will tell. So there's not much else I can say about it because this is just going to go on and on and on. But there's another team with a vacant head coaching run, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. They're also a team that has vacancy for the head coaching role. To wonder who are they going to hire? I mean, I know there was talk about them possibly trying to bring back Jeff Saturday, but clearly he's not qualified. And so far, though, it looks like though the Colts are probably going to go with Jeff Saturday. From what I heard, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but it looks like it. It's like if that's the case, then it's just that's embarrassing. That's absolutely embarrassing right there in itself, right there. If the Colts can only get Jeff Saturday, because I just don't see what. I don't know if anyone wants to come to this team after that. I don't think anyone coaching candidates trust management. I think management's really keen on bringing back Jeff Saturday. I really do. It seems like it, which that would be a mistake in my view for them to bring back Jeff Saturday for another season. I don't know. What are you going to get out of that? Bringing back Jeff Saturday. It boggles my mind thinking about it. It comes across as yes man culture all the way at the top, if that's the direction they go. And the reason I mention that is because I don't know what other direction they might try to go here. Personally, it just seems like that's the only direction the Colts may go here is that Jeff Saturday. But either way, the Colts and Cardinals, the fact that it's taken them this long to find a new head coach tells me there's big trouble for those teams headed down the line. And that's not even getting into their roster and what they need to do to fix up for next season. I'll get to that in another vid, another stream, other streams and other videos. But right now, the Colts remain vacant because it appears as if they want a yes man, but we'll see ultimately where it leads them to. But I'll definitely come back on here, drop a few YouTube shorts talking about them when those teams officially do hire a new head coach. But there's one other team when it comes to head coaches that I'm going to discuss. And if you guys didn't follow me to the start, you know who that is. Frank Reich to the Carolina Panthers. So Frank Reich, now there was the possibility though that Steve Wilks could remain the head coach, could become promoted up to head coach after the job he did as an interim coach. But then again, that can also be a contributing factor to their division wasn't good, so they could be a little more competitive. And that could also be a reflection of other teams slept on them because Steve Wilks was the interim coach. But I get if you choose between Frank Reich and Steve Wilks, you would say that Frank Reich is the more qualified coach if you go off that alone, just between those two. So I get in that sense, if you're talking just between those two coaches, you feel like Frank Reich's more qualified because he at least got the Colts to the playoffs twice, even though his run didn't end well, and he still did finish with a winning record during his tenure as their coach. So you feel like, okay, yeah, despite his flaws, he is better than Steve Wilks because you remember the one time Wilks was a head coach, he did a poor job. Only stepped up as an interim coach, and you're like, yeah, they got up to 7 wins, but you really look closer at it. They still weren't that good. And they finished second place in a weak division. So I understand the idea of, okay, let's bring in an experienced head coach who actually has led teams to the playoffs a couple times. So I get where they're going. And plus, Frank Reich has a little history with the Carolina Panthers because he threw the very first pass in their franchise's history. That's right. In the 95-96 season, when the Carolina Panthers were an expansion team, he threw their very first pass. There's a little history there between Frank Reich and the Carolina Panthers. So I understand why they want to bring him in. I guess they were impressed with his work in Indianapolis, especially that first year with Andrew Luck, and they liked what he did. And they also liked what he did too with, what was it? Oh yeah, well, I guess year two, even though when they had Jacoby Brissett, even though they missed the playoffs, they had 7 wins, but they still looked competitive and they still put up a fight in those games. They still did everything they could. So I could see there where maybe they were impressed with Frank Reich and thought, okay, we have a decent roster. Maybe we just need a little bit of an upgrade. And considering the shape their division's in, if indeed, in fact, Tom Brady is retired, Frank Reich could be enough for this team to return to the playoffs for the first time since the 2017 season. So it could, in that regard, Frank Reich could certainly be the upgrade this team needs. But in terms of contending for a championship, no, it's not. No, it's not the upgrade they're going to need for that. But at the same time, you got to ask yourself, well, what coaches were available for them? So that's a factor you got to get. So I get where they're coming from with Frank Reich. He does have a reputation of being quarterback friendly and is an offensive minded guy. Remember his work he did with the Eagles in the previous Super Bowl run, especially those Eagles fans watching this. You remember that? Yep. You remember. So Frank Reich's got a good reputation there working with QBs, even though it didn't finish well over there, in Indianapolis last year. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second, but right, even though he didn't finish well, he still did pretty solid. Even with Carson Wentz in 2021, he did okay with it, but I can also blame that on Colts management for bringing in Carson Wentz instead of finding a good quarterback too. So it's like, I can also respect what Frank Reich did with the Colts the more I think about it. Now, was he a perfect coach? No, he wasn't. He had his flaws too. And ultimately, you know what? Some of his flaws caught up to him in that final season there as a coach. But I think with the Panthers, the question will be, will they be able to continue in the direction they're going, or was their run after firing Matt Rule fluke when maybe you think teams kind of slept on the Panthers, they kind of took advantage of that and had a halfway decent run the second half of the season? Got to wonder going into this season. But then again, it is the NFC South, so that division's a dumpster fire, so it might be enough for them, but time will tell if that's the case. So we'll have to see how that goes right there. Now, I'm just going to briefly talk about a couple other hirings too. Let's start with the most recent one. Yes, that's right. Brian Flores is now the Minnesota Vikings' new defensive coordinator. So obviously we saw throughout the season the Vikings defense, to put it lightly, was flawed. Let's just be nice and say it was flawed. But yeah, it was a wreck the second half of the season. And you could see signs that, this defense is going to be one of the things that's going to be this team's undoing come playoff time. And it was. It was one of the main factors to why they lost that game against the Giants. Now, you can also blame, and yes, I'm going to say, you can blame Kirk Cousins for that decision, throwing a few yards downfield on 4th and long. However, yes, so that falls on Cousins. However, in this case, mainly the defense is what I'm focused on here. So I'm going to keep the focus on there. The focus on Kirk Cousins will be for another time. But for Brian Flores, though, obviously he's an upgrade as a defensive coordinator. Now, I thought he'd still be in consideration for being a head coach. But then again, I thought maybe the Cardinals would be a spot for him. But who knows? Maybe he didn't want anything to do with it. Maybe he wasn't interested in coaching Kyler Murray because, with Tua, he wasn't the biggest fan of Tua. And you saw during his rookie year, he relied more on Fitzpatrick than he did Tua because of it. So if Brian Flores is that coach that isn't really the biggest fan of a quarterback, do you really want him coaching a quarterback that he's not fully on the same page with? So maybe in that way, Brian Flores is doing the Cardinals a favor by sticking with his strength of being defense minded. But as far as this goes, I do think I do think maybe there's an opportunity Flores could be a head coach sometime down the line. But as of now, I think with the Vikings, this is a good role for him. And the Vikings defense should be better. Because here's one thing Brian Flores does that the Vikings didn't do during the season. Blitz, bring some heat, get some pressure. That's one thing Brian Flores did good over there in Minnesota, did over there with Miami. That's one of the good things he did, especially that 2020 season. One of the stronger spots of that defense. Remember how they pummeled Jared Goff in that game against the Rams at Hard Rock Stadium? You guys remember that one? That's one example of how Brian Flores-led defense can lead effectively. And remember what that defense did when he was in New England for that 1 year as defensive coordinator, when they shut down McVay's Rams in Super Bowl 53. Remember that? They shut them down. So yes, indeed, Brian Flores knows how to get more of those guys, especially getting some pressure at the line, which is something the Vikings lacked. And that's the main upgrade Brian Flores brings to this defense. So they should definitely be better under his leadership. And there's one more defensive coordinator I was going to talk about right here, who we're a little bit familiar with him as Eagles fans. That is Jim Schwartz, former Eagles defensive coordinator, now the Cleveland Browns defensive coordinator. So Jim Schwartz, his tenure with the Eagles was a mixed bag right there as a defensive coordinator. You saw some ups, but you also saw some downs too. I mean, those first 2 years he was there, the defense had improved from where they were in the first half of the 2010s. So Jim Schwartz has his strengths, but at the same time, he also has his weaknesses too. Like you saw those last couple of years, he didn't really do that great a job leading there defensively, especially in 2020. Some of his main highlights there were talking smack to DK Metcalf, only for DK Metcalf to go off and have a good game on that Monday night game we had against the Seahawks in 2020. Yeah, the defense just being a wreck. Anytime they had to play a team that had good options, it was just... Yeah, so that final year raised some question marks on whether Jim Schwartz is really that great. But then again, too, to be fair, you look at some of the guys Jim Schwartz had to coach there in that Eagles defense in late 2010, especially post-Super Bowl run where we lost guys like Patrick Robinson. Yeah, we didn't really use Chris Long as much yet. Especially once you got to that point where that started happening, the defense wasn't that special. I mean, because that was a spark right there that helped us there. Having Patrick Robinson. And then, of course, ultimately, you had Derek Barnett after year one. He started to fall off. You saw it. Injuries played a role those couple of years with the Eagles. But he also had guys like Ronald Darby, Sidney Jones, Jared Mills. Not exactly the cream of the crop of defenders now, are they? So that plays a role too, but I'm curious what Schwartz is going to do because he has some decent talent over there in that defense with Cleveland. Because even with the Browns being a wreck in front office wise, especially at the quarterback position, I mean, there's still talent there. So if they just manage to get all the pieces right, this team could actually turn things around. But Jim Schwartz, I mean, I don't know. Kind of iffy on him. I mean, he's in a better situation with the guys he has there than he was with the Eagles at the end. So maybe he does better there. I'm thinking he'll do better than he did late in his run with the Eagles. So I think for him, it'll be an upgrade. But for the Browns, I mean, we'll have to see what happens. I think it could be helpful, but then again, they have bigger issues they have to worry about. And there is one last thing I wanted to talk about with coordinators before I move on to discuss the Pro Bowl. Okay, so Dan Quinn is staying as the defensive coordinator of the Cowboys. I personally don't think that's a shock at all because he knew he was liked there. He's better defensive minded. You remember his last run as a head coach? He couldn't keep it together. So for Dan Quinn, he's actually better off staying there. He's got a good group of guys right there he plays with. He's got Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Trayvon Diggs, some of those guys. So he's got a good group of guys right there as far as players go. So I understand from his perspective him staying. And he's clearly better as a defensive coordinator than a head coach anyway. So good for him. Best of luck to him. For me as an Eagles fan, I personally wanted him to go. But I understand from his perspective where he's coming from. So now I'm going to move on now. So there's my overview of some of the coaches moves that are going on, some of the coaching hires, the vacant head coaching jobs, and defensive coordinators. All right, but enough rambling about that. Let's move on to the next subject. Let's talk about the Pro Bowl. So I'm going to start off with the obvious. People really don't care for the Pro Bowl. Even though football is the most popular in North America, or particularly the United States, out of the four major sporting organizations, the National Football League, National Basketball Association, Major League Baseball, and National Hockey League. In the United States, the NFL is the most popular, yet for whatever reason, is the least popular All-Star weekend, it feels like. You would think with the NFL being popular, it would have a more interesting All-Star weekend. I think part of the reason why is there's nothing really. I'm going to start breaking down about what I think are some the reasons people don't really care for the Pro Bowl. And to start, main reason why is because now there's so many replacements at the Pro Bowl. It's just absolutely ludicrous. It's really become a joke in a lot of ways now because you get, especially with it being the week for the Super Bowl, you get a bunch of guys that decide they're in the Super Bowl that aren't going to play, so that leaves openings. But then also you get other guys opt out of the Pro Bowl for personal reasons or they just don't feel it's worth it. So allowing these guys to opt out of the game, that's also created a problem where you get even more replacements and get some guys that really shouldn't be there or there. Like this year for the AFC, oh, Jesus, you had injuries, personal reasons, Super Bowl, and you got freaking Tyler Huntley in the Pro Bowl. Now, he's not the worst quarterback in the world, but Tyler Huntley in the Pro Bowl? And considering it was flag football, they could have just got Lamar there for it. If you were that desperate to find somebody, considering it's flag football, you didn't have to take any hits. But then again, I'm surprised he didn't even come back just to play for that. Get Trevor Lawrence, who had a miss, kind of up and down season, not a Pro Bowl worthy season. Derek Carr. Yeah, those are not guys I would really look at and say, oh yeah, they should have been in the Pro Bowl. So I think that's one problem right there. Another thing is the competitions aren't really that interesting, really. The most interesting one to me is kick-tack-toe. With the long snapper, kicker, punter, they have to try to hit the board above in a tic-tac-toe. You were the 3 guys from the SC, 3 guys from the NFC. You have to try to get 3 sideways or straight across or straight up, just like tic-tac-toe. You guys know what I'm talking about. That's the most interesting game you have there on the weekend. I could understand keeping that. Something else that would be interesting, I think, is have a competition where the punters have to try to punt the ball inside the 10-yard line. Maybe you have, remember like those old Madden mini games, if you played like some of the older Maddens, like in the 2000s, remember you had those mini games on like the PS2 and original Xbox? You had to punt, if you were playing as the punter, you had to try to punt the ball inside a certain space. You'd have like red, orange, green, you get a certain amount of points for whatever spot the ball lands in. They should do something like that, I think, Pro Bowl weekend with punters. That would be cool if they actually did something similar. That would be cool. And now all of a sudden you got me thinking of ideas from the old Madden mini camps that incorporate into Pro Bowl weekend. And what was that old competition they used to do with the quarterbacks that was actually somewhat kind of fun? What was it? Precision passing? You had to hit the dots, and wherever you hit it, you hit it, you would have certain spots where you hit a certain spot, it get you certain points. Like you have 20 points this spot, 40 spots this point, 60 points this spot. Like they should bring that back. Like that was the competition, guys like Brady, Manning, even Aaron Brooks 1 year, Donovan McNabb, those guys participated in. They should bring that competition back. That was a good one. I think that would actually make the Pro Bowl weekend more interesting. Could do that. I think tic-tac-toe would be interesting. Competition with the punters where you have a red, orange, and green space within like the 10 or 15-yard line. They have to hit it in. Wherever the ball lands, they get more points for it. That'd be interesting right there with the punters. Yeah, maybe a trench fight thing would be more interesting. Right, that would actually be interesting where they, defensive linemen, they have to swarm past the offensive lineman in a trench fight. Maybe have to swarm past two guys, and whoever does it the quickest out of the all-pro defensive lineman wins. That would be a more interesting competition, I think. And you guys on there, you can comment, let me know what you would find interesting too for Pro Bowl weekend, what you think would work, what wouldn't work for competitions. I think that'd be an interesting one right there. Let's see, so that would help right there. I know maybe like a kickoff competition between the kickers would be interesting too. You have them all, maybe like a 50-plus yard kick contest, whoever makes the most. Do it kind of similar to the way the NBA does the 3-point shootout, maybe, but with kickers having to kick the ball, maybe a 50-plus yard kickoff or something. That would be interesting right there. You have guys like Justin Tucker, Jake Elliott, Matthew Prater, and those guys doing it. That would be fun right there. Watch those guys try to kick 50-yard footballs. Whoever kicks the most good in maybe a minute period of time wins. That would be a good competition right there. Right. I mean, there's definitely things the NFL could be doing that'd be more interesting than what they are doing. Sure. And I think with the flag, if you wanted to do flag football Pro Bowl weekend to mix it up, what would be an interesting idea that would help the Pro Bowl itself be unique from the NBA All-Star Game, the NHL All-Star Game, and MLB All-Star Game? Do like a Legends versus current guy flag football game. Take legends that are young enough to still run and young enough to still play in flag football and put them up with some of today's guys. Do it that way. Yeah, you could stick with the field being 50 yards. You could maybe have, guys like Peyton Manning play. Maybe Eli gets some playing time too for the Legends. Guys like LaDainian Tomlinson. Maybe Chris Johnson, at running back to give you some ideas. You could have guys like Chad Johnson, Terrell Owens at wide receiver in flag football. Or, you could have, of course, you could even have Drew Brees at quarterback, of course. You could also have guys like maybe Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald at receiver, Gronk at tight end. I mean, they could do this. This would be fun. I mean, this would certainly be a lot more fun, I think. It'd be interesting to see those guys play on a team. And then on the opposed, maybe Wes Welker, try to give him a call or try to get some guys, that are relatively recently retired that could still run and play flag football. Maybe like try to get a Charles Woodson in on it, Troy Polamalu in on it. Maybe Brian Urlacher or Ray Lewis in. That would be fun right there, I think. Really would. Get guys like James Harrison in on it. That would certainly, Maybe offensive lineman get Joe Thomas in. That would be fun right there. That really would. You have that there for you can, now that AJ Green's retired, maybe like next year he could participate. And then, of course, for today's guys, you could have the guys like the Mahomeses, the Hurts, or even if they're not active, or even if say, it would have worked better this year if, say, Mahomes Super Bowl, Hurts Super Bowl, Burrow, Allen didn't participate. Okay, then you could still get Geno Smith in there, who had a solid season. You could still get maybe a Kirk Cousins in there, still have some credibility there at quarterback for some of today's guys right there. And of course, you get guys like Alvin Kamara in at running back for today's guys. You get the point, all the top stars of today. That would actually be more fun. And I think you guys are feeling me on this idea because I see those guys, you're still tuned in. That would be a way to make the Pro Bowl fun and unique from the other sports all-star competitions. Instead of the standard conference versus conference, here you get this whole idea you're doing a flag football game, but you're taking some legends that could still participate in flag football and putting them up against today's guys. Maybe you could do 2 games or something like that. But it would certainly be fun. Now, obviously, with some of the legends, you're going to have to reach out in advance to these guys. If they were to do this realistically, you had to reach out to them in advance, and not everybody you reach out to is going to accept your invite. So that's something you have to realistically consider. Maybe maybe Larry Fitzgerald might not be able to show up, but you can maybe find somebody who would be a decent replacement there for him. So you could still do that right there too. Maybe, maybe a Dez Bryant could be a replacement right there. So you got to factor that in too as well. Maybe Julian Edelman could be a replacement if one of those guys doesn't accept the call, But that would actually be fun though. So I think, the NFL needs to switch it up with its Pro Bowl because people clearly are not interested. So the NFL needs to freshen it up. So that's the last I'm going to say about that right there. So now I'm going to get to the final subject at hand. And that is the Super Bowl 57 Media Day. So yesterday, Super Bowl 57, we had the Media Day. Players and coaches got together. They talked. The most interesting part about it was you had Jason Kelce, Travis Kelce, and Mrs. Kelce, Donna Kelce, their mother. They were there. Michael Irvin spoke with them. They talked about how they grew up together. It was their dream to make it to the Super Bowl one day. And technically, they've already fulfilled that dream in terms of winning Super Bowls. But now they technically get to fulfill that dream of both playing in the same Super Bowl. It's on opposite teams, but they do get to fulfill that dream. So that was kind of cool right there to listen to. I'm sure some people liked that. And then you also had, Mrs. Kelce bringing out cookies as the gift. Michael Irvin joked, "Oh, you've been preparing this kid for a while. You got him big and ready for the NFL." And it was all kind of fun, little stuff like that. And then you had Mahomes and Jalen Hurts talked about the first 2 times they had 2 African-American quarterbacks on the opposite teams as the starting quarterbacks in the same game. So that's history right there. So it was, they shined some light on that. And, the coaches talked about it. They talked a little bit about Andy Reid's time with the Eagles. Andy Reid remained humble, talked about the Eagles. And that was all nice and dandy. It's all cool. And you did have Juju Smith-Schuster decide to, beat Juju Smith-Schuster, try to talk a little smack, try to draw some attention to himself by sitting there saying that the best Philly cheesesteaks aren't in Philly. But we know Juju Smith-Schuster and talking smack has backfired before. Some of the dancing on the opposing team's logos hasn't always gone his way. Some of the, stuff that, remember when the playoff game the Steelers had against the Browns, he was like, "Oh, it's just the Browns." Yeah, how did that one work out? So Juju has a history of opening his mouth and it not always going as planned. So, you know what? He wants to talk about Philly cheesesteaks. Let him say what he wants to say. Now, me personally, you mean I've never really tried the Philly cheesesteaks. I've had my own cheesesteaks, of course, in my life. I've had my cheesesteaks, but not the Philly. I mean, it's been a while since I've been to Philly, and I don't remember ever actually having a Philly cheesesteak myself. I mean, some of you guys may hate me for saying that, but you know what? That is what it is. But still, obviously, Juju's trying to take a jab at us because he knows a lot of people in Philly ain't going to like that comment because it's a popular item there. So, you know what? Just let him talk right there. Don't worry. Let Juju talk. Let these other guys talk because really, all it is just talk right there. It's all a publicity stunt. It's all an event for TV ratings. It's an event for the guys to have a little bit of fun. And that's all the Super Bowl Media Day really is. It's a show and a spectacle, let's face it. Because all that talking back and forth, all that fun stuff, it's not going to matter come game time. Because when it comes game time, you're going to see the best team in the AFC, in the Kansas City Chiefs, and the best team in the NFC, in the Philadelphia Eagles, square off in the Super Bowl. One team wins, one team comes up short of that Lombardi trophy. That's the way it's going to go down. So all that talking ain't going to matter come game time. Sure, some of us may have enjoyed some of the talking they did yesterday, but hey, just remember that was all just a show. It's all just a publicity stunt for fun. And that's really what Media Day is. So that's why I'm not going to really say too much about it. So I decided, I'd at least acknowledge some of the stuff that was talked about yesterday and at least acknowledge what's going on. And I did think that was funny, the petition to have Donna Kelsey do the opening coin toss. Yeah, that actually would be interesting, actually, to see her do the opening coin toss. It would actually be something different. Here you have Jason Kelsey's mother, the mother of two players, two of her two sons on opposite teams in the Super Bowl. That would actually be interesting to have the mother come out and do the coin toss because this could very well be the only chance you get to do that. Because what guarantee is there that you have two brothers playing on opposing teams? Sure, you had the Harbaugh Bowl, but that was with coaches back in Super Bowl 47. You're talking about players here. I think if you're ever going to do that, have the mother put out the opening coin toss for the Super Bowl because her two sons are in the game. Do it now while you have the chance to. It would be something different. It would probably be something that would get some good attention there. But hey, I don't think it's going to happen, but it is a fun idea to think about. But yeah, those are the main takeaways from Media Day. So yeah, you had a couple little fun moments here. There's some funny moments here, but come game time, it ain't going to matter. Nobody's going to be talking about that come game time because by tomorrow morning, let's face it, I'm going to forget about it by tomorrow morning anyway. So I'm not going to really say anything else. So yeah, I was planning on trying to go an hour, but I'll have to end it a little bit early here. So hey, so to everyone that tuned into this right here, I want to say thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this right here. I had fun doing this. I felt this was something different and starting to notice a trend. So you follow me for a while. You notice I've been doing here the past couple weeks, doing some more streams, trying to come up with different ideas. And I'm enjoying these channel exclusive streams, so I'm going to keep them coming. Now, Thursday, I will have a channel exclusive stream for NBA fans watching this, where I'll discuss the winners and losers of the trade deadline and who I think are the winners and losers. And tomorrow night, I'm trying to get to do the 76ers game with Mitch Kofsky, head of the Hardcore Sports Network. But if I can't get to do it with him, he's got another guest for that, then I'll do the 76ers play-by-play and reaction tomorrow exclusively on my channel. So I will be doing the 76ers game tomorrow, either exclusively on my channel or with Mitch on the Hardcore Sports Network. I'm still waiting to find out about that, but I'll let you guys know in the community tab on my channel. So, yeah. And I will be back Friday to do a preview of the Super Bowl at 1 p.m. So, I'll be back in a few days to discuss the Super Bowl more and give my preview and predictions for the game. So again, everyone tuned in, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. Have a wonderful night. And until next time, it's Nicky Stees signing off.